How would you explain what you do for a living or what you're known for if you were talking to a child?
I am the person who is trying to ensure that that child ends up with having a magical life with artificial intelligence where they are in charge and the AI is not.
Now, speaking to me as not a child, what does that mean?
Well, what that means is that good governance of artificial intelligence is essential. We know that the technology comes with things like biases, lack of explainability, lack of accountability, and the new technology that we're seeing in generative AI is even worse at those. And so what we want to do is to make sure that as we're building these tools, especially tools that children are going to be using, we build on a firm foundation. It's the old parable of don't build your house of sticks or on sand. Build it on firm foundations, and those firm foundations are responsibly procured and developed and designed and used artificial intelligence.
Amazing. So in terms of how you came to do this, what's your trajectory? How did you come to be in this position that you're now in?
Well, I think I'm one of those people with a career that looks like the sort of career that our children are going to have. So I started as a barrister. I'm a human rights barrister by background. I then became a judge, decided I didn't want to be permanently a judge. And so I moved to America to become a professor. And during the time I was being a professor, I was thinking very carefully about human rights, human trafficking, and the interaction between humans and machines. And that was back in 2010, before it was fashionable. And so in 2014, I was actually one of a few people in the world really thinking about if we had machines that could truly think and think at human level, what would that mean for humans? And I happened to be sitting on an aeroplane on a 10-hour flight next to the CEO of an AI company. And we got talking, and he asked me to form an ethics advisory panel halfway, or maybe a little more than that, into the plane journey, and be its C-suite executive. And so I moved into thinking about governance of AI in 2014, and I've really been doing that ever since, and trying to lead the charge, especially as we come across ever more developed AI, and the need for good governance simply grows.
So let's go back a few steps, because your trajectory started at barrister as far as this conversation is concerned. What about educational trajectory? So I think we've all seen those viral videos of celebrities like Ian Wright and Adele who say, like, there was one person who helped me be who I am. So I love to understand, like, who, if anybody, fueled or failed you on your educational journey and were an essential cog in what led you to being where you are today.
Well, I can say this because she has now died, but my headmistress was the person who would have stood in my way. She didn't think that I was university material. And so I was lucky to get into university. And, you know, had I not got into university, look how different my career would have been. In terms of support, it's trite to say it, but it's my mother. She always believed that I could be whoever I wanted to be. And because I actually had a very diverse education experience, because we moved a lot, it was my mother who kept me on the trajectory of getting the right education, enjoying education, which is even more important, and wanting to learn.
So what about purpose? Because just by what you've said so far, like changing career paths, moving around post as being a grown-up, what was your purpose, let's say, when you were a barrister compared to now?
Oh, it's the same. If I were to talk about the golden thread that runs through my career, it's all about helping people. As a barrister, in doing the work I was doing, it was all about helping people. So helping individuals to be in a better position legally. When I became a professor, that sort of opened up to a few more. It was helping my students to learn and to enjoy their futures and be successful in their futures. And now it's still about helping, but it's more about helping everybody to achieve the very best future that they can with AI.
So from my own experience and feeling fueled and also failed by certain people on my own journey, I think there are not misconceptions, but preconceived notions about what it means to be a graduate of university degree, a vocational professional, the importance of getting a degree, and then once you have that degree, the world is your oyster, when in fact, for most children, that's not going to be the truth. For most graduates, that's not going to be the truth. But can you speak a little bit to, I guess, how your journey has led to this, what seems like a set of transferable skills? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, what you do isn't actually, being big in AI or being a judge or in human rights. It's that transferable set of skills that you're applying to each of those things. And let's say AI was outlawed, or if there was a mass catastrophe that destroyed technology, you'd be able to just move that onto something else, right?
Probably, yes. And I would say that it's critical thinking and analytical thinking that is the golden thread. Also advocacy. So I am an advocate for good governance of AI. I was an advocate for my students and how they learned, and I was an advocate for people in court. So again, it's trite because we're all talking about what are the things that are uniquely human in the age of AI, but the ability to think critically about any given situation, the ability to analyze any given situation, and the ability to advocate, I think would set me up for really doing almost anything.
So if we transfer that...
Apart from retirement.
Oh, fair enough. Well, I would say retirement is an antiquated concept now in the best and worst senses. But if you were to take that logic around critical thinking skills, which is something that we at LinkyThinks, it runs through everything that we do, and we have our own, what we think are solutions to certain problems, how do we solve, let's say, the mass lack of critical thinking skills in a child's educational journey? What are your solutions to that problem?
Well, the solution is not to use AI. The solution is to use AI as a tool to help us develop critical thinking. And actually one of its failures at the moment is one of its benefits on that. At the moment it hallucinates a lot, which basically means it produces the wrong information. And so you are actually requiring children who are using it to help them write essays or to do research or to look critically at the work that the AI has produced for them. But critical thinking can really only be taught by human teachers and learned from experience and reading. And one of the things that worries me when we're thinking about critical thinking is that not enough young people are reading books. They're reading in 10-minute intervals, but they're not reading beyond that. And without that ability, they can't read they can't absorb the information that they need to make them useful critical thinkers.
So in terms of governance, what does that actually involve day to day for you? We can talk about it and you can speak about it in a public forum and be an advocate, but in terms of actual operationally, what does a role in governance look like?
Yes, a really good question. So first of all, it starts with companies or organizations, so it could be schools, where you go and you find out what their needs in AI are, and not just find out what their needs are, well, actually finding out what their needs are rather than what they think they need. Because very often they think they need AI to solve a particular problem and they don't. So first of all, level setting. Have they got AI systems? What data do they have? And what do they want to solve for? And then from there, you can build an understanding of what responsible AI provisions they need to put in place. So, for example, they might be a bank, and their data might well be biased because they've only given mortgages to people who lived in certain postcodes. But they want to develop an ability to give mortgages to people who live in other postcodes. Well, then you've got to help them de-bias that data, so that they can actually get the algorithm to give the mortgages to people who otherwise would be unable to get mortgages. So that's a really good example of sort of being in the weeds of how to do it. But it's more than that. It's actually also in organizations from the president or the CEO down. So everybody has to understand where AI is being used in the organization and has to espouse responsible AI to give the whole staff the opportunity to think of ways of using AI responsibly, rather than what predominates in the tech sector at the moment, which is build us X and we will pay you, bonus you, on the basis of how quickly you build X.
Now, how enforceable is that? So I heard tell of a company that is developing an AI model, or at least incorporating an existing AI model into a process for recruiters. So if anybody doesn't know, if you are recruiting for a job, you can't recruit based on ethnicity or gender, or not recruit based on ethnicity or gender or other factors. But this idea purports to be able, or this AI model purports to be able to look at a blank CV that has nothing to do with gender or to do with sex that a human would be able to tell, but this AI model will be able to strip that information off the details within that CV, thereby allowing the recruiter to recruit based on ethnicity or gender, or again, not recruit based on that. What's stopping them from doing that? What can you actually do to prevent things that might be considered ethically or morally not good?
Okay, so the first thing is that you have to know that AI is being used in that application. Because if you don't, you can't sue anybody for the fact that you weren't offered that job. So that's the first point. And often we don't know whether AI is being used or not. So if you're a candidate and you are not offered the job, you might want to go back and say, did you use AI? At that point, if you were in America, you would go to the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission, because they will then take up your case, or they will investigate your case to find out if there was a discrimination, which is defined by the Civil Rights Act of 1965. And what you'll find is that there are regulators all over the world who are there to regulate discrimination. Likewise, you would find the same thing in England. And what in England that the government have decided to do is give AI regulation to the existing regulators. So if you are discriminated against, you would be looking to going to the regulator who's in charge of that. There are also existing laws on the books in most countries that would cover that. And so you have existing laws and you have the regulators. But first you have to know that it was an AI who tossed out your application.
But you mentioned laws. Now, from a very not tech-savvy consumer's perspective, something like ChatGPT hasn't been available on the wider market for that long. AI as something that is widely used, maybe a bit longer, but not very long. How can countries or authorities develop, vet, and then put into force new laws as quickly as the technology is being created?
Well, that's actually why the governments of America and the UK have actually decided to go with, let's see what the existing regulators that we have and the existing laws that are on the books work with AI. Because you can't, as you say, it takes a long time to legislate, and then it takes a long time to litigate that legislation. So Europe has taken a completely different perspective. They've been working over the last 4 years to create the European AI Act. It'll come into force in about 5 months' time. And they have taken what's called a risk-based approach. So they've identified certain uses of AI as extremely risky or not risky at all. And then there are levels of there will be levels of requirements depending upon what level of risk your deployment of AI is. And interestingly, we were talking about recruiting. That is a high risk level use of AI under the EU AI Act.
I can't remember who I was talking to about this earlier. It might have been prior to us recording. I can't remember if it was you. We were talking about how the fear around advancements in technology goes back to the first iterations of technology, like the printing press. But there are legitimate fears, and there are maybe less legitimate fears. Let's say if the incorporation of a new technology leads to the redundance of certain job roles in wider society, that also might mean the emergence of new roles that haven't previously been anticipated. How do you manage the governance and make decisions when you can't anticipate the potential benefits of an AI or artificial intelligence model that hasn't been tested yet, something that might get classed as high risk, but actually might be more beneficial or benevolent than you previously thought?
Well, we're doing our best, to be honest. What we're doing is trying to protect society from the things that we know are going to be extremely destructive already. So deep fakes, for example, and their influence in elections. We've seen that happen 2 days ago, where Democrats in New Hampshire were being persuaded by a deep fake of President Biden's voice not to go and vote in the primary. So we're going to see a great deal more of that. We are already seeing revenge porn deep fakes. We're seeing bullying by classmates using porn, using deep fakes to create pornographic images of their classmates. We are seeing in law video testimony being altered so that the witness is not saying what the witness actually said. So we're actually seeing these problems already. And undoubtedly, there will be new problems that we face in the future, and we'll have to adapt to those. I do think that there will be new jobs in the future. In fact, my job didn't exist 10 years ago. I created my job. And so governance is about managing the problems that we know and considering the problems that we expect. It's no surprise that law is reactive to problems turning up. But what we need to do is really think about what society do we as humans want in 2050 and plan for it. That would be a better route than having legislation to curb it. But we're not doing that. Nobody on the planet is doing that. And as a result, we're left with the governance solution.
What about for young people who, let's say, listen to this and go, you know what, that sounds like a fascinating career path. So you came about this by chance, but also a wealth of experience in law and other things. But let's say this is now a potential career path for a young person to go into governance of AI, or even working within not the technology side of AI, but other sides. How does somebody start that process?
Okay, well, in fact, in the time that I've been doing this, people have got PhDs in AI ethics. And so it is now a whole career field. And you have people doing this work inside companies. Some of the big tech companies have hundreds of people employed doing this. And working alongside technologists, which is actually the best way of creating good governance. Don't let the technologists go off and do it by themselves without having the ethicists, if one wants to call the governance people, in that team, because that creates diversity, and that's better for the way that we create AI. So really, because we call it responsible AI and not ethical AI anymore, you don't have to do a philosophy degree. You have to do a humanities degree or a science degree, but really be interested in what you want your society to look like and be prepared to think about how policy is created and how AI needs to be driven within companies. There are many courses out there now across the world, but particularly in England and America and Europe. We really need to plan for our future, and we want to make it human with AI, not AI driving the human. And at the moment, good governance of AI is our best tool for achieving that.
Thank you so much. This has been fascinating.
Thank you.
LinkyThinks.